Tonight on Weigh-In, we take a look back at all the action from the Champagne Turf, including 13-time Group 1 winner Melody Bell. Not only that, but an exclusive interview with Deputy Prime Minister Grant Robertson and a review of the Book 1 and 2 New Zealand bloodstock yearling sales. So much to get through on Weigh-In, let's get into it. Today's Weigh-In is brought to you by our stable of sponsors.
I know you really want it. You want it. In the party tonight, hear what I say. No worries in the party tonight, hear what I say. No worries in the party tonight, right? I said no worries in the party tonight, right? I said no worries in the party cause the party lasts longer. Blasting out your speakers back off the transponders. Receive the signal and blast it back stronger. My crew and your crew, yeah, we come to conquer.
Wonderful scenes coming in from the Champagne Turf on Saturday. As you heard, plenty to look forward to on the show this evening. My co-host is Michael Guerin. As always, good to see you back, Michael. You've been out and about and pretty busy over the last couple of weeks.
Haven't we all, Emily? It's been an amazing time for New Zealand racing. Thanks for joining us on a Monday night, everybody. Really privileged tonight to bring you that exclusive interview with Grant Robertson. It's incredibly hard for anybody in the media to get hold of a Deputy Prime Minister without a press secretary or anybody around, Emily. He answers us honestly. Stick around for this in segment 2. His views on what's going to happen with New Zealand racing. But we also got to wrap the sales tonight, as you said. But that day at Trentham was both special and dramatic and partly crazy and also very sad. There was a lot of things happening in a very short space of time. So we're going to try and cover those off for you as best we can in the next hour or so.
Yeah, we will definitely do that. Let's start with that Group 1 success of Melody Bell in the Thorndon Mile.
The 850 metres as the field for the Harcourts. Thorndon come to the home corner now, and the race is on here. Who's got the nice game? Tobalicious Communique, Melody Bell's presented, Deerfield the outside, the mitigator, and Cinerama is still giving itself a shot at them right through on the inside. May have put the head in front, Melody Bell, and Deerfield over on the outside coming strongly. Melody Bell looking for 13, the class starting to show. Here it is, celebrate the greatest of all time, Melody Bell. Melody Bell wins it in 13, equals Sunline. Second over Deerfield, I think, Cinerama, Tobalicious.
She went huge today. She's just losing too many links at the start, which isn't helping her when you're running against Melody Bell. Maybe 2,000 metres at Timaru, we can go one better.
Really good. I was slow, eh? So I missed the kick, so I just rode him how I found him. Ended up outside the good man. He gave a really good kick. Was strong to the line.
Look, he was fired up when he jumped by the gates, but yeah, he's done really well. Got caught wide, but yeah, I'm proud of him.
Yeah, he's gone another honest race. He always goes honest. He's a lovely old horse, and yeah, it's very hard to beat the class. Thank you.
Yeah, we're happy with his run. Tried something different and rode him last, and they didn't go as hard as what we thought, so he got pulling a little bit, but I think if we can do it again over a shorter distance, I think he'll come back to his best.
Yeah, didn't really intend on being in front, but just in a small field, she's just jumped good, and that's how it ended up. Got a pretty soft time in front. A little bit disappointed in saying that. Thought she might have still kicked on a little bit better, yeah.
Well, I look back at what the beaten jockeys had to say and also a reminisce around Melody Bell. Michael, she was just as exquisite as we thought she would be. She shows her class time and time again. I just thought there was a minute there when I wondered when we were going to see that acceleration, and then all my doubts were put to bed very quickly as she powered away.
Yeah, I don't think it was her best Group 1 win or even close to her best Group 1 win. It was an odd race for many reasons. We'll discuss the tragedy of Rock on Wood later on. They went 1:38, which is incredibly slow for horses in that grade. She came home in 33.6, and she can only go as fast as those around her. Her body of work is what's impressive. The fact she still wants to be there and she's still sound, and she's won the 13 Group 1s, which very likely will become 14, Emily, was more impressive than the actual act of the race. I think Jamie and the team, and we'll speak to John Galvin shortly, are probably happy to get that out of the way, knowing that 1600 might be a bit pointy for her these days, and very quickly move on to the 2000 of the Herbie Dyke.
I just thought it was a great thing for her to be able to go 1600 in a fresh state as well. A really good training effort by Jamie to do that.
Well, it doesn't happen very often, and he's now done it twice because he did it also in the Windsor Park Plate. The other drama in the race, obviously, was Opie, and he missed weights earlier in the day because he had the 2-week suspension, so therefore that's when a weight will often get away on a jockey. And from what I could ascertain, I spent a lot of time in the weigh-in area and the scales area. He was very, very close to missing this ride, and I know how much it meant to him. He couldn't speak before the race. He could barely speak afterwards. You were trying to interview, obviously, who was your husband. It must have been quite emotional to see him that dehydrated / emotional.
Yeah, I think unusual for him to show any emotion. He's normally got sort of ice in his veins. It's his personality, but she's been a really special horse to us. She's got us out of trouble a number of times. When you need a Group 1 win, she's the horse that provides it for you. And even on Sunday, talking to Michael McNabb, and he referenced Troy Harris as well, she has helped those 3 boys out so much in her career. It's a case of, if you can get to the race and hold on, I'll do the rest for you, I'll win. And,
I spoke to Opie about that afterwards because I realised it's a tricky situation for you to be talking about him in that light. And I said, well, were you worried that you were too dehydrated to go out there and do the job? He said, once I was on the horse, I was perfectly fine. I was totally fine. But yeah, obviously no one can do that all the time. And I know that sometimes afterwards he considers where his career's heading with that sort of thing. Let's hope that he doesn't get suspended again and he can keep on top of this at least to get himself through to the autumn, because it's a wonderful story together. Jonathan Parks, by the way, if you're wondering, was on standby to be the backup rider because obviously all the other riders who have ridden the horse were booked. So that created an enormous amount of drama around the day, Emily. The man who's now got the dramatic decision to make eventually is John Galvin, of course, because she's a syndicate-owned horse, which means one day she's going to have to be sold. Yeah,
it does. John Galvin joins us on the phone now to have a chat about his Wonder Mare. And John, congratulations. It must have been a sense of relief and satisfaction to see her equal Sunline on Saturday.
Yes, indeed, Emily. G'day, Mick. It was fantastic to be there. Lots of emotions, of course. We knew that she was ready to run just from her track work during the week. But at the same time, she was fresh up at a mile after not having raced for, several weeks. It was a smallish field, and that could always be a bit tricky. But, and of course, there was the sad situation on the race with Rock on Wood breaking down. That's never great to see. But in the end, our mare got up, and as you would have seen from the footage, there was huge emotions from, the ownership group and the crowd as well. I think I was in the birdcage watching the race on the big screen, and believe you me, the noise behind me was deafening in that last 200 metres.
Yeah, the crowd really get behind her, don't they? Even when she canted out on the track, there was that great cheer as she set off on her way. You and the team have experienced 13 Group 1s with her. Does that feeling get old? Do those same nerves build up every time?
Yes, it's been a 5-year ride, hasn't it? We bought her in January 2016, so it's been 5 years that our group's been together. Who would have thought that after winning the Karaka Million, I mean, if she'd never won another race, we would have taken that thrill to our grave. So who would have thought that she would have just checked on year after year after year, winning all of these, wonderful races. It's been a fantastic ride.
John, I was speaking to Jamie today, and obviously you and Jamie work through Melody Bell's program together. The Herbie Dyke is the logical place to go next for $400,000, and that would give her, if she's successful, sole ownership of the NZ Group 1 record. There's the option to go to Australia or race at Ellerslie in the what's called the Bone Crusher these days. I presume the second of those options is more likely at this stage?
Correct. So what's set in stone at the moment is the Herbie Dyke, and Jamie and I have been very clear on that we even between he and I, we're not going to talk about what we do after the Herbie Dyke and until after the Herbie Dyke. So let's get through that race. But then, of course, from a syndicate manager point of view, I have to be, communicating with my clients and telling them what may happen. So 4 weeks after the Herbie Dyke is the Bone Crusher at Ellerslie, 2,000 metres Group 1. That happens to be the same day as the All-Star Mile at Moonee Valley, which is a $5 million race, which she's nominated for. But when we think about that and go over in our minds, it's not the right race for her at that time, given her program and the fact that she probably is definitely now better at 2,000 metres. To go and try and win a mile in Australia at that point of her preparation against the really best horses over there, I think would be a bridge too far. And it's not a Group 1 race. What we're trying to do is add as many Group 1s to her CV as we can.
Okay, John, is this her last year racing? And if so, how do you go about selling her? Because obviously she doesn't divide into all the parts for the syndicate, and I would expect that the syndicate's not going to breed from her en masse. So how would she be sold as a breeding proposition?
Okay, so this is definitely her last season. We've already said that publicly. There's no going back on that. She deserves it. She deserves to have this to be her last season. There's two ways of selling her. If there was a compelling private offer from someone at some stage, then we would accept that. More than likely, however, she's going to be sold at a public auction. And I've had information from all of from the three big public auction houses, New Zealand Bloodstock, Magic Millions, and Inglis, as to their ideas on how they would market her and so on and so forth. But no decision's been made on where she will go to be sold.
John, a couple of years ago, your syndicate turned down an offer which I hear was $3.2 million or in that vicinity. She's won a lot of money since then, so you've proven to be right. What do you value her at? Because there'll be people watching this who own studs, and they might think that'd be good, let's go try and buy her. Does the number need to be bigger than the last number? Because obviously that's two foals they won't get out of her because it was 2 years ago.
Yeah, so the 3.5 million, it was 3.5. That was when she had won, I think, 6 or 7 Group 1s. And it was a lot of money on the table, and we put it to the syndicate, but they were unanimous that they wanted to continue racing her. And I was very proud of them for that, because we're racing people and we don't want to retire our horses until they've, had their opportunity for greatness. And she's kicked on since then, won another 6 or 7 Group 1s and may well win more. As to how I would value her, well, my answer to that is the market will determine that, not me. She will, if she goes to a public auction, she will go unreserved. She's on the market, and the market will speak, and we'll take whatever the final price is. If I was to use a benchmark, we look at Sunlight, who was sold in July 2020 as a 3-time Group 1 winner at the Magic Millions sale. She made $4.25 million. Is that a benchmark? I don't know. The market will determine her eventual sale price.
Well, John, it's been great to have you on the show this evening, and I wish she could keep racing forever. She's done so much good for New Zealand racing, and I'm looking forward to seeing her in the Herbie Dyke Stakes in a couple of weeks' time.
Thanks, Emily. I'm sure there'll be a few tears when she finally does finish.
Absolutely, I think from a lot of people around New Zealand. And as I said to John then, when she cantered out onto the track at Trentham, just hearing that crowd roar, and it's just great. It's what we all go to racing to enjoy, and to see people get around her like that is wonderful. I went down to the tie-ups where she was, pre-race when Jamie was bringing the saddle down. She just is so focused, and she just loves her job. And I truly believe she's going to miss racing when it's all done, because I think she lives for it. It's what she's such a professional. She just eats it up.
there's every reason to think she can retire with 15 Group 1s. I know it's easy to say that sitting here because I don't have to do any exercise to get them, but she's $1.40 for the Herbie Dyke. Now, just looking at the market for the Herbie Dyke again, obviously the big loss out of the race is Rock On Board. We'll get to that in a second. Cinerama will go after that staggering second the other day.
Stunning performance.
Amazing.
Yep.
Stood in the gates, and I actually watched the race
10
with
lengths or
Alan
something, wasn't
Sharrock
it?
and the team, and they were just like, oh, how did that possibly happen?
Yeah.
So she was massive, so she's earned herself a right to go there. Now, Amaralina will not go to this race. What they're doing is, in case something goes wrong with Melody Bell, Team Tiaka are keeping a runner there, a backup runner. Brando was second favourite. Brando's on the plane on Wednesday. Bowden is going. Spoke to Andrew Forsman tonight. The Chosen One is going. So this race is going to rate really well internationally because Melody Bell's obviously our highest rated galloper, and the Chosen One's run third in the Caulfield Cup. So that's really going to help it heading forward in its personal battle with the Livermore to become our most important race. They sort of share races in between themselves. Obviously, the horse we lose out of the race is Rock On Board, and we can't move on talking about her greatness without talking about what a tragic loss that is for the Elliott family, for Leanne, obviously, for Ryan, for everybody involved. It was. I don't think we could afford to make too big a deal of it on the day because we didn't want to detract from what Melody Bell did, but their horse is just as important to them as Melody Bell is to her connections, and I felt terribly sad for them. It was after the race, I wasn't excited at all about Melody Bell. I was in awe of her, but I was really sad for those people. They're lovely people, and you could feel the pain in the jockey's room. You could feel Ryan's pain and his mum's pain. So we really feel sorry for you guys. And he's a really good horse. He won 8 of 19. He was a really good, solid Group 1 performer at Zabeel Classic, Herbie Dyke.
Yep.
And Captain Cook, we got his Group 1 level. So
just makes you appreciate them so much more, you know. Like it's it's a tough old game.
Well, it's tough anytime you take the float to the races and you take it home empty. But it's incredibly tough when it's the superstar of a very small team. So to the entire team involved with the horse, we really do feel for you, and we didn't want to mention the greatness of the one act without the tragedy of the other.
Yeah, well said, Michael. Let's get you along to the Wellington Cup now, which was taken out by Waisaki, trained by Alan Sharrock.
Buffett in as they come to the home corner and straightening up Bluey's chance. Sergeant Blast over on the outside. Wider out then, coming at them pretty quickly here, D&G. Waisaki starting to get into the clear and charge now. We've got Bluey's chance. Sergeant Blast over on the outside. Wider out Waisaki starting to wind up. Tiako Calaburn back in behind these as they work on down Bluey's chance. Waisaki's finishing hard, the favourite. He's coming quickly now. He's going to win the big black. And Waisaki a favourite scuff. Bluey's chance maybe just amazed. From either swords drawn right with them, Duplicity, and then we had the next one home, Tiako Calaburn.
I was so excited. No, I was actually really nervous. He actually travelled a little bit better mid-stages than I would have liked. Because obviously no one was crossing over to the rail. It just left him a wee bit exposed and travelled a bit keen. But when he came off the bridle about the 1,000 metres, I knew I was probably close enough that I still didn't have too much more work to do. But it was just a matter of trying to get a smooth path out and keep that momentum going. And he was brave in the end because it did take him a while to pick those leaders up. So credit to his fitness.
Yeah, it wasn't a very good shot in the race, but he bloody so tough. He's so tough. And he just gave it his all. And yeah, I loved every minute of it.
Super run by the horse. Still only very young, so he's got a few years ahead of him. I think this time next year will be his go, but terrific run, first time over the 2 miles and against this class too, so very, very proud of him.
Super happy with the horse. He's had a really interrupted run leading into a 3-2 race, so he's gone really well. A little bit disappointed with myself. I probably should have gone over to the fence because he's that sort of horse, and then that's where he's lugging to, so he still went really well for a horse that's had a rough interruption in that race. He's gone really well. He's hit the line real nice.
Yeah, he went really tough race from nearly widest barrier. Yeah, he was hanging out all the way, but I think he's still quick enough well as well.
D&G, she went really well. I just think, like Waisaki, you just can't beat him, but she hasn't disgraced herself.
Look, a very honest run by the horse. He's a nice, lightweight, cup sort of horse. A little bit more off track will really help him.
He just battled today. I don't think he puts too much effort in.
got back a wee bit, travelled nice, but went the pace really quick and he didn't really fire.
Yeah, he was in a perfect spot, travelled good. Just had nothing on the corner. He's probably just a 2,000 metre horse.
Just a bit of a botch up. We sort of wanted to get we really wanted to get cover, and unfortunately we ended up stuck out in front. We thought horses would come around us and lead, but no one wanted to go, so did the best we could.
Well, Waisaki, the successful winner of the Wellington Cup, Sam Collinell and Sherritt combining with that one. And Michael, it was a best laid plan that started a long time ago for Alan. And how often do these things actually come off? But the horse arrived on race day in pristine order and delivered accordingly, and a really promising stayer, I think, for the future.
Yeah, and great ride. I mean, Sam didn't panic, and she did stick to the inside, and Alan wasn't happy about that when I was sitting next to him during the race, and she just timed it to a nicety. She's now won this Cup and obviously 2 Auckland Cups, the last Auckland Cups. So he's obviously a very, very good stayer. They were thinking Adelaide Cup. There's a lot of stuffing around and going to Australia, so more likely the St Ledger at Trentham, then maybe put him aside, and obviously he can come back for an array of cups next year.
A Melbourne Cup?
I'm not even sure you get in, would he?
No.
It's hard to tell. Depends
It's
if
a
the
pipe
international.
dream, though.
Look, it is.
He's
and
only lightly raced.
I thought maybe more of a Sydney Cup type of horse.
Yeah, for sure.
Maybe around Randwick, but also there's plenty of options for good horses. Even going to Australia for secondary races, 2,400 metre races.
Yep.
Bluey's chance was enormous. That was great fun to watch for the Moore team. So well done to Kenny. I know you didn't win, but you ran second with a horse who was given no chance. There's the owners of Waisaki. I saw them in a hotel bar. A well-behaved one, I must add, on Saturday night, and they were absolutely thrilled. They were loving every minute of it. Just Amaze was really good. David Green lamenting the fact that the inside of the track was off. Virtually every trainer I spoke to on Saturday was lamenting that fact. I don't think the track was well prepared on Saturday. I think it was too wet down on the inside, and I don't like to see that on Premier days. The rest of these horses, as good as some of them might have been, I don't think they're going to be factors for the Auckland Cup market. The first 4 or 5 in the Auckland Cup market weren't in that race. So I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of the format of this doesn't carry forward to the Auckland Cup. But that doesn't take away from Waisaki. They don't want to take him to Alice because they don't think it's a true 2 miles, as like a Trentham one is. But yeah, he's got plenty of options heading forward for sure.
Yeah, he sure does. And let's get you along to the Desert Gold Stakes next, where we saw an up-and-coming star get up for victory in Force of Will.
Press has a length and a half in front. Kalua Nui Da Vinci Girl, El Reze over on the inside, and then Fleetwood Macca wide out. Force of Will starting to come, and Charm Star from a long way back, still Victorian, but here's Force of Will leveling with it over on the outside now from Victorian, who's fighting really hard inside of it, and then getting home well. Passione down towards the line though, and Force of Will too good. Victorian second, Passione third, and then we had Sweet Anna 4.
Well, if you saw that last start of Force of Will at Tauranga, you got a pretty good indication that this horse had plenty of ability, and she showed that again today. She's a little bit of a star on the rise, I feel. All you can do is win, and she just keeps doing that. Yeah,
the Tauranga run was quite graphic, beating the older horses, and I wasn't surprised she was able to do this. I spoke to co-trainer Lance O'Sullivan tonight, and I don't think they're quite sure what to do next. They've got to go to Te Rapa and give her a chance at the Fillies Classic, because if she handles 2,000 or 2,100 there, she'll handle maybe the Oaks. If she doesn't, and she is by power, so you're thinking she will, then obviously plans change. And there's not that many options for good fillies here below 2,000 metres for the rest of the season. So I think they're going there, like a few other people are thinking, let's go round and find out where we head after that. He did say her 4th dam is Horlicks, of course, the horse Lance rode to win the Japan Cup. So there's some hope there. Valuable second place money for the second horse and the third horse. I thought with Victorium and Passione, that's really good credit to them. But that Oaks market we're talking about, and the fillies market, of course, has Amaralina just hovering over it like this gigantic black cloud. Yeah. If you're going somewhere else, you're thinking to yourself, can we go there and beat it? I don't know whether Force of Will can, but it'll be interesting to see how she turns up over 2,000 or 2,100 at Te Rapa. Just talking to Lance too, by the way, Rocket Spade races at Te Rapa in an open handicap carrying 62 kilos on Wednesday. He should be very careful. This horse is stepping up in distance. We haven't raced it for a long time. Be careful with him. It's not a very strong field, but just a little warning if you're looking at taking the short odds, because that's his Derby prep race.
Stepping stone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not a race they have set him for.
Okay. Race number 8 on the programme at Trentham caused a massive stir worldwide in some horrific scenes where, well, what can you describe this as, Michael? It was...
Emily can describe it as madness.
Madness. I thought I saw a ghost, honestly.
What you're about to see is obviously a 24-year-old male jumps 2 fences. He had to jump 2 fences to get onto the track, and the jockeys see him here. You can see one of the horses being pulled out of his way. It looks like it's computer generated. It doesn't look real.
Yep.
And obviously it was real and very, very
The multiple
scary.
angles too just really highlights the speed that they're going and the... there's no words to describe the stupidity, really. It just horrific, the danger that he put riders and himself and horses in.
There's 2 parts to this. First of all, he's very lucky.
Yeah.
You get hit by a horse at that speed, you're going to die. And ironically, the racing industry would have copped the blame for that, even though nobody did anything wrong. We're also very lucky no horses or jockeys were hurt. Before we get too into slagging this young man, because he may have some sort of mental issues, because to do that, you are not in a good place in your life. That's not an act of heroism or bravery, that's just plain stupidity. He goes to court on Thursday, and they will have a psychiatric assessment, because people who run out in front of traffic are assessed for mental illness for a variety of things. So I'm not going to get too much into his mental state because I don't know the person involved. But the longer question for racing is, what do we do next? Now, we can't overreact. We can't say we need security guards like at the cricket facing the crowd for the entirety of the straight, because if we do that at one race meeting, we're going to do it at all race meetings, and we can't do that. So I spoke to Cameron George, the boss of NZT, after night. He said, no, we're not going to do that, because it's almost a self-policing act. If you are stupid enough to go onto a racetrack during a race, eventually someone's going to get hurt or killed, no different to running onto the motorway. So most people aren't going to entertain something as stupid as that. You do wonder about a whole bunch of other things, drinking, who knows, illicit drug use. All those things are possible when somebody does something that stupid. The one thing Cameron did say, and this is one thing you can take away from this, is that young man will be banned from racing forever in this country. And that will be for all 3 codes. So he will never attend a race meeting again. And if he tries to, but after being warned off, that is also a trespass offence, which is also illegal. So he'll go up for criminal nuisance on Thursday. I'm just glad nobody got hurt.
Yeah.
Had a horse struck him, that would have become an accident scene, and they would have had to cancel the Wellington Cup the next race.
Yeah.
So the multitude of things.
Not that it matters in any race, but in the big race as well, taking away from, you know, what was a celebration of the day would have been.
It was stupidity, but as I said, the worst thing we can do is overreact and pretend this is something that's going to happen all the time here now, because most people aren't that stupid. It's not like streakers at the cricket who go out there and you can't get hurt. If people keep doing this, they'll get killed.
Yeah.
So that will self-police itself a little bit, but I hope the courts see him with the appropriate action of not disrupting a sporting event. He put other people's lives at danger, Emily.
Yeah, he definitely did. Hopefully we don't see that ever again on a racetrack. Let's get you along to the Timaru Stakes next. Riccarton Park, All About Magic, was really good taking out this race 8.
Then came Miara Mary. He Can Fly presented, yet to really be asked. He goes for him now, Jacob Lowry. Wide around is All About Magic, but Belfacino giving them something to catch to the 300 metres. 2.5 clear, I Am a Rock. Then He Can Fly. All About Magic, wide outs running on. Belfacino 2 clear of I Am a Rock. All About Magic, He Can Fly are coming. It's Belfacino. All About Magic, He Can Fly. Good Anya's running on. Belfacino keeps giving. All About Magic dives, got up. All About Magic won the Timaru Stakes over Belfacino, close 30, the Good Anya or He Can Fly. Then came I Am a Rock.
All About Magic, just keeping on giving all the way to the line, dives and gets a success, and nice little celebration over the line as well.
Actually a very underrated mare. This is a horse who's won at Group 3 level before, won 3 of its first 5 starts as a 2-year-old. Has a lot of black type next to a stake. Ran 3rd in a Canterbury, 2nd at a Canterbury Bell, 3rd in another group race down there, and now that was a listed win. So when she retires, she's going to have a lot of black type next to her name. She's
Flying under the radar.
And, she's the daughter of Showcase, which she's out of a Monjeur mare, which you probably don't expect to see knocking around at Riccarton so often. So actually a very valuable broodmare for when they eventually choose to send her to stud.
On Sunday at Pukekohe, we had an open handicap on that program over the 1600 metres, and Royal Performer was really good taking out this one.
Watch this space and further back Lincoln King to the outside, down to the 350. On the rocks, tackled now by Royal Performer. Jason Beltry, Royal Performer's all over the place here like a drunken sailor, but it has the lead at the 250. Royal Performer leads by 2.5 from on the rocks. Out wide now, running on is Lincoln King from Watch This Space, then Jason Beltry and Hey Tiger, but shut the gate time. Royal Performer too good here, blew the start, but it didn't matter in the final analysis. Lincoln King was second, third was Watch This Space, then Jason Beltry and on the rocks.
Just too good, wasn't it? Royal Performer cruising over the top of them. A pretty classy field as well, including the up-and-coming Jason Beltry, and of course a Group 1 winner in there as well and on the rocks.
Yeah, look, he's a horse that Bob Vance is considering aiming at Easter. There's not that many 1600 metre opportunities in this grade around immediately, so maybe the Easter's the place to go. Darren Dennis obviously had a scary moment there. He dropped the reins in his right hand, which is his whip hand, and he had to put a Greek gathering experience, shall we say. That would have been awfully scary. But he got it all back together again, and long story short, he was that dominant.
I think it would have won even if he had dropped both reins, don't you?
But it's a former Hong Kong horse, and he's going to be a chance in Easter, which could actually be quite a strong Easter. A lot of horses could be heading that way, Emily. So when you put all that, what we just saw together, it was a pretty crazy weekend of racing.
Crazy. Some things I never thought I'd see on track, including 13-time Group 1 winner and a man standing between a field of 16 horses.
Full speed. Just with the Trentham, I think the Trentham Club did a really good job. They've had a tricky time with this meeting because Karaka Millions cannibalised it a touch. Really good fields, good feel to the day. The incident with the person on the track's got nothing to do with him. Absolutely nothing to do with him. There was something wrong with that track at that meeting, though. I think either they overwatered the insides or they overwatered it somewhere. And I realise it's tricky. Wellington's a tricky ecosystem, but I still didn't like the way the track played on Saturday for a Group 1 day, and it's something to try and improve on. Yeah.
Let's have a little look at the Trainers and Jockeys Premiership, an update around them. And first of all, the Trainers Premiership, 3.9 million stakes for Jamie Richards, leading with 102 wins. Stephen Marsh, Alan Sharrock off the back of a Wellington Cup success in that third spot. So you've got the Pitmans doing a nice job with 33 wins for the season, and Baker Forsman with 31. Turning over the page to the Jockeys Premiership, Danielle Johnson, as she has been for the entire season, a standout leader of that, with just over the $2.5 million worth of stakes. Well, back into the action. We're going to take a break here on Wayne, and on the back of that, the exclusive interview with Grant Robertson.
Today's weigh-in is brought to you by our stable of sponsors.
Well, Minister, great to have you here at the sales ground and giving you the confidence that the government's behind us as we look to buy horses in this wonderful industry. Tell us about your experiences in racing growing up.
Oh, I grew up down in Dunedin, about a stone's throw from Forbury Park, and so the night trots were a real treat for me. My dad used to take me along there, and you know, there was a lot of drama associated with it. He always bet on 7 and 9. That was his very technical way of deciding what to do. So I loved that, and then carried on an interest. Visited a lot of race meetings around New Zealand over the years, more as an interested punter, not on the industry side per se, but definitely something that I appreciate. I think it's a real part of New Zealand's DNA and something I'm looking forward to supporting.
Okay, you've become the Minister of Racing. Is that something the boss imposed upon you or something you wanted?
Well, she did ask me to do it. It's actually how it works for all of the portfolios. And I think from her perspective, she knew that I had an interest in the industry, obviously with Winston no longer being in Parliament, looking for somebody else to take that on. Also, sport and recreation is one of my other portfolios, and clearly, particularly now with sports betting, there's an association there with the TAB too. So it all kind of fitted together, and when the boss asks, you say yes.
It's a very diverse portfolio now, dealing with people who are based on the farms, dealing to international rights when it comes around gambling. What sort of team do you have around you? Because obviously you have other portfolios and of course your Deputy Prime Minister to help you run the racing industry.
Yeah, and look, actually that's a big part of the reforms, to be frank, is actually setting up the bodies that are actually going to be able to do that. So in terms of how we reconstitute the TAB board, what we do with the Racing Integrity Board. There's no shortage of advice, Michael, as I'm sure you'll be aware. So I'm not lacking in informal advisors. The way the government manages it is through the Department of Internal Affairs, and there are some people there who've got long history with the industry who understand it well. But for me, a really important part is working with the current transitional board of the TAB, making sure that we understand what's happened so far. So yeah, I've got a good network of both formal and informal advisors around me.
Minister, people want things to happen fast in the modern world, but some of those legislative changes have taken a long time to bring into play. Do you believe we now have the base and the framework to do what we need to do in the racing industry?
We will, and ultimately what St Peters did was create the change, and now it's my job to implement some of that. So yes, we've still got a few loose ends to tie up in terms of the appointment of boards and one or two regulatory changes, some of which I know have been a long time coming. Things like the point of consumption levy and so on is actually really important to people, but we've got to get it right. And my view is that the most important thing is to do this well. This is a once-in-a-generation change for the industry, and so if we have to delay things by a month or two to make sure we get the right people, or we make sure that the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, then I think it's worth the wait to get it right.
The new board of the TAB are going to need to make some very important decisions around an array of things, Minister. You can't possibly know everybody, so who advises you on the best people to put on that board?
So part of the legislation which I've inherited is a nominating committee for the TAB board, and this is a model we use in other parts of government. So for example, for the New Zealand Super Fund, we have the same arrangement. We have a group of 3 people in this case who sift through the nominations that have been put forward, do their due diligence, talk to people in the sector, and then propose people to me. Now I can accept or not accept their recommendations, but it's a good process. Obviously for the TAB board, we've also got the 3 representatives of the codes who come through from the codes, and the balance, the other 4, we use this process. So that includes people like Liz Dawson, who's been on, Rita, Alan Galbraith. These are people who've got good level of knowledge of the sector, who are playing that role of providing me with advice on those who've put themselves forward.
When the Minister gave a relief and support package to racing post-COVID, he had $2.5 million in there for the investigation of potentially looking at the IGA, basically saying, what are we going to do here with offshore betting and allowing people who live in New Zealand to bet offshore? Where does that stand at the moment?
Yeah, so obviously as the government's reconstituted itself, we've got a new Minister of Internal Affairs, Jan Tinetti. I've been talking to her. She wants to continue with the work that had been begun around how we do better manage offshore betting. And so that work will get cracking again, I'd say, within the next month or two. And I want to make sure that from the point of view of the racing industry, they're part of that conversation. Same thing applies with my sports portfolio hat on as well. So that's still very much a live undertaking. And what we've got to do in this global world that we're in is do our very best to ensure that we've got an industry that's competitive, but that's also protected from the worst ravages of what would be pretty much a bit of a disaster if we just left it, I think, to the market to decide here. We do need to protect our online wagering industry, our wagering industry in the face of the online world, and so that work will continue.
We got a much needed handout. We also got the governance structure we've needed over a long period of time. Is it now up to the racing industry to make the right decisions and not rely on the government to help out?
Very much how I see it. Our job has been to set the framework up. As I say, I think Winston bit the bullet. It needed to happen. We've now got a framework that I think gives the industry a seat at the table, a strong voice in what the future of it will be there. The government will continue to support the industry and be a part of it, but now is the time for the wider racing industry to step up and be innovative. They've shown resilience through COVID, and I think it's there for them. But yeah, that is very much how I see it. My job is to set that framework, get the right people in place, and give the industry the chance to flourish.
Minister, Labor has been very strong on the Provincial Growth Fund and trying to help the regions which economically struggle. Racing has the problem of potentially having too many racetracks and maybe needing to close some. How do you see those two things gelling together, and is it maybe an opportunity for those smaller regions to let racing know they still want to be part of the game?
Well, I certainly hope so. As I say, for me, a big part of my interest in racing, and as I've grown up, has been through those country meetings. Hitchhiking down the West Coast one summer to go to all of the meetings there, and I do think it's important. But one of the things that happened as we went through the process of the reforms was making sure that actually those decisions have got to be taken in those communities, and it does put pressure on those communities, perhaps to compromise, perhaps to think again about the way they do things. But there is an opportunity here. There's a pathway forward where there is still a strong level of regional community-based racing, but it's done on a more sustainable model. Give and take, compromise, but there is a future.
Minister, we live in incredibly challenging times, something none of us have seen before, and we do thank you for everything that your party and your cabinet has done to keep our country safe. How much time can a man as busy as you possibly have to think about racing? Or is it a case where you take the best advice and then you make the best decisions on that advice?
Well, I think that's the case in any portfolio as a minister. And, for me, I've been the finance minister now for 3 years. During that period of time, I was the sport and rec minister. And it's actually great to have something else to think about. So yes, finance will dominate most of my time, but having sport, recreation, racing means that I get to exercise my brain in a different way. I've got to be very efficient with the use of my time. So yes, you're right, I need good people around me. That's what this process that we're going through is about. But I think it's important as finance minister to have other portfolios that give you a different way of looking at the world, and it's something I'm interested in. So yep, it's not going to get as much time as finance. I hate to tell you that, Michael, but it is something I'm interested in and I'm sure we can manage.
Well, you brought it up, so I'm going to mention it. Finance, you're at the sales ground. Has anybody pulled on the suit jacket in the last couple of days at Karaka Million, which I know you enjoyed on Saturday night, and said, "Oh, Minister," or even, "Grant, would you like a share in a horse?"
Multiple people have done that, and I've just told my partner to keep his hand down at the sales here. Yeah, look,
it doesn't always work. Trust me, I've tried that.
I do know that too. No, look, it's there's a few people around, and I'm very interested. So we'll see what happens.
Oh, great to get that exclusive time with Grant Robertson, and a big thank you to him for getting that inside information. He seems, Michael, like a really approachable person who answered all your questions very fully.
Yeah, usually when you go to talk to someone that high up in the government, you have to go through a press secretary, and it becomes usually nonsense. It does. So they vet the questions and all that sort of stuff. I had a chance to meet Grant at Karaka Million night. And I said, "Should I call you the minister?" He said, "No, call me Grant." So that's why I called him Grant. And he said, "Yes, I'll do it the next day." And there was no, he wasn't trying to dodge any questions. There was nothing he didn't want to be asked about. Obviously, he was asked about the internet gambling agreement there and whether we would shut the borders for offshore gambling. He obviously has a lot to learn about racing, but he likes racing. And obviously he's a very intelligent man. He's the finance minister for our entire country. So I don't try and politicise this situation. I don't particularly get politically involved in life. But having dealt with a lot of politicians, we're very lucky to have somebody who genuinely cares. He was there on the Sunday night. He was there on the Saturday night, on the Sunday at the sales. He was at Wellington Cup on Saturday again.
There, yeah.
And he's an engaging guy, but also he's very high up in government. He's the Deputy Prime Minister. So if he says something to Jacinda Ardern or on Cabinet, they're not going to go, "Oh, he's pushing racing's boat because he's their man." That's not going to happen. So we're very lucky to be in that situation. The other thing about this, though, is, as he said there, and you've got to listen to this racing industry, it's up to you now. Now, we have the biggest decision in racing's recent history will be who now sits on the TRB board. Because, Emily, if we employ, and the codes have put forward their own people, that's causing a lot of consternation between the three codes about some of the people nominated who are former employees of the TAB. If we, the Trainers Association, have put forward Alan Jackson, who's the former head of NZTR. Now, all those people have the right to put forward whoever they want. But if you write down everybody who's likely or being put forward to get on this board, we end up with a whole bunch of people who used to run New Zealand racing, running New Zealand racing with a whole different bunch of legislation.
Yeah.
Now, that's not the point of this. That just can't be. And I've been speaking to the codes. There's a lot of confusion or anger about what everybody else is doing. If we end up at the end of this process with 6 or 8 or 10 people in positions of power who were all in different positions of power a year ago, that's a complete waste of time. So I'm really glad that Alan Galbraith and Liz Dawson are on the committee that will advise the minister, because if the codes are putting through people who aren't going to be beneficial to the game and bring specific skill sets around gambling, which is a very specific skill set, then they should turn those people down. This is a crucial time, and if we end up with the same bunch of people, this is a gigantic stuff up. And I can't say that this with no bias towards anybody involved. It's just the facts of the matter. They didn't make all these changes for us to end up with the same people.
I can't really add a whole lot to that, Michael, but it's I'm sure what you said is exactly spot on. Let's get you to another break, and on the back of that, we'll crack into the NZB sales review.
Finally, I feel complete. The days of my heart searching for love are over. Now I'm complete.
Today's weigh-in is brought to you by our stable of sponsors.
Welcome back with us on Weigh-In. We're going to get into a little bit of a sales review. Of course, we had a bumper Book 1 and Book 2 sale, and it really buoyed everyone's, I think, enthusiasm around New Zealand when it came to racing. You were out there, Michael, at the sales complex, and just for me, watching from home, it looked really buoyant, a great atmosphere, and we saw some horses reaching some good prices as well.
Yeah, a lot of people were engaged. Like, I thought of the last couple of years, because sometimes I think our buyers fairly get intimidated by Chris Waller or whoever else is buying, and particularly the Hong Kong buyers. As we're looking at the top lot here going through for Sir Peter Vella's Pincaro for $800,000. She was the toppy of the sale, purchased by David Ellis, and John Magnus obviously taking a share. We covered that off last week. This sale, because we didn't have those people on the ground, the domestic buyers seemed more engaged. They were like, okay, well, we can probably go to war with this person, or I'm bidding against a guy I know. So the domestic buyers definitely stood up. The online platform really held up. It was really good. There was no issues with that over the course of the week. That man on screen, Roger James, he
bought some lovely horses.
He bought some lovely horses and was underbidder, which is really crucial on a whole bunch of horses. That's the lot going for $720,000, which Bruce Harvey won out for the Hong Kong Jockey Club. So it'll go to the international sale there. But there were a lot of people who you knock around and you see at the races, and that is normal horse trainers who are buying in that 100 to 120 range. The first day the market set, the second day people were sort of realistic, saying, okay, if I need to buy a nice horse, it's going to be 100 to 150, and then onwards and upwards for the better ones. And it was a wonderful sale considering what we didn't have. And we didn't have some of those Waikato stud Severbills, which would have really bolstered.
We didn't have one international buyer on the ground, which is remarkable. And look at that clearance rate, 81%, $95,000 median, an average of 123,184. And there's a look at the top lots of Book 1. The Zoo Star, of course, top at 800,000, but Al-Manzoor was very, very well received, which was a great boost for Cambridge Stud. And I say it like I'm surprised, but when you look back at his racing career, he was such a good racehorse. We're really privileged to actually have him here in New Zealand.
Well, that touches on the most obvious point. That's we need 5 more of them.
Yeah.
Now, we had one coming in Roaring Lion, and sadly he passed away, and Tavistock's now left us, and Sacred Falls was emerging, and he's left us. So yes, we had Severbill and Al-Manzoor and only a few Ocean Parks. We didn't have enough Ocean Parks at the sale. It was off the air for him as in breeding numbers. We want more of those next year. And what we also do is hope that one of these other stallions, or 2 or 3, kick a goal, because it's hard to replace what we had 10 years ago. It's this High Chaparral and O'Reilly and all those other horses. So there's a few stallions in the book who probably aren't going to sell for big money to Australia. And you can feel that. You can feel it when you're on the grounds.
Yeah.
There's definitely a division of, yep, I want one of those. Okay, I'm not so keen on one of those.
Yeah.
And that may change. You know, I was talking to Mark Chittick about it, and as he said, the first year Severbill was at the sales, he was mainly in Book 2.
Yeah.
So things do change.
Change, of course.
So we're not saying that the stallions aren't good enough.
Look at Zed.
Exactly. We haven't got that. And Time Test did some good things there. And some of those horses were coming through. And Prasia is obviously going to have more Book 1s next year. Prasia was really good. Purin Cantos are selling so well because he's so good in Hong Kong. So all these horses are in play, but
I was impressed that the book 2 also maintained that level of enthusiasm as well, because...
Well, it was up.
Yeah.
It was up because that was where the domestic buyers went and they bought. And A, it's easy to sell shares in horses at the moment because the country's in lockdown as in regards to you can't travel or anything else. And B, the ready-to-run market's strong. So the domestic buyers really tried to buy the... I went with Andrew, I went to 110,000 for a time test and got beat, you know, and you would have thought you would get that horse for 70 or 80.
Yeah.
So there was really good money for nice colts in particular. What's really interesting will be whether the people who are sending horses to the Magic Millions and in Sydney find that experiment useful, whether they make money out of it, a lot more money because it costs them more money to go there, or whether they say in 1 or 2 years, actually I'd rather just sell these at Karaka. Yep. That's the most interesting factor heading forward. That and the stallion development around some of those level 3 to sort of level 7 of the pecking order stallions where they end up. Because the buyers clearly aren't going anywhere. They're there. What product we can produce. Obviously we're hoping there's a lot more people here next year. And whether we can maintain our best bloodstock in New Zealand. Because I spoke to Mark Chiddick again. Mark's a very reasonable, honest guy. I said, what did you make of the Magic Millions thing? He said, well, it was okay.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised if maybe we saw more of those horses retained in New Zealand, which can only be a good thing for us. So that's what I sort of felt after a week of sales.
Yeah, exactly. Speaking of Mark Chiddick and Waikato stud siren Savabeel, we saw Probabeel step out at the trials during the week. This is her having her warm-up trial at her first look at Geelong, I think it was, in Australia. She did her customary thing, I think, of just not really cooperating like a race day. I think it's very typical for her. She didn't have the blinkers on, and I would expect a greatly improved performance at the races. This is her style.
Yep.
Wouldn't concern me at all.
She heads to a 1200 on Saturday in Melbourne. Jamie will put the blinkers back on her. Damien Lane to ride her, and he said, look, she'll get a slap on the bum at some stage and that'll wake her up. So she has 2 more starts to get into the All-Star Mile. She's going to get in on the voting. There's no doubt she's going to get into the race, but Melody Bell, you've heard tonight's not going. Agon is definitely not going to the All-Star Mile. Get on the site, vote for Probabeel.
Yeah.
It's good for the New Zealand industry. It'll be great to have her in the race. Vote for her. Do not vote for the other 2 New Zealand nominees. They are not going.
And great that we've got a mare that's actually a very good chance of winning the race, not just going around in the race as well. I think we can be a good chance of taking that money back here.
As she showed at the Epsom, she can jump and put herself there in a competitive Group 1 mile. We don't have a lot of horses like that over here, so she's going to the right race. Damien Lane, be interesting to see whether he retains that ride heading forward. So, yep, as I said, make sure you vote for her because then she'll be in and she's representing our industry and Waikato and Cambridge stud as well, of course, because they own her. So those people put a lot of money into the game and we should support them with your 2-minute voting process. Hard
to believe that this time last year, All-Star Mile last year, that was pretty much the week before lockdown. Hard to believe that that was a year ago. There was some pretty amazing scenes coming in from Naas Racecourse in Ireland. Have a look at the jump jockey here, Kevin Broader. I hope I've pronounced that correctly. He catches quite a bit of air and miraculously manages to stay on his mount. I think he's got some sticky undies or something. Look at the air he gets here. Woo!
They would have been sticky afterwards, Emily.
Yeah,
he was very lucky to get away with that. Yeah, pretty amazing scenes. And just talking about Ireland, by the way, Gordon Cunningham, one of the really popular guys in New Zealand racing from Curramore. Wouldn't be able to do this, I'm picking, but he was...
I don't think most gymnasts could do this, do you? But yeah, Gordon got a wonderful award, didn't he?
The Wild Geese Award, that's awarded by the Irish Thoroughbred Breeders Association. There's only 11 recipients worldwide. Gordon lives in New Zealand and they said, no, you have embellished the breeding reputation of Ireland. The award sponsored by the Aga Khan. So immensely popular guy in New Zealand is Gordon. Congratulations to you, mate. It's a pretty big honour.
Yeah, it is. Congratulations from all of us here at Weigh-In. Well, that's it for the show. We've crammed it all in. Hope you've enjoyed this week and we'll be back next week for some more reviewing action.